This episode of The Three Body Problem is presented by Thinkst Canary. Most companies find out they've been breached way too late, usually after the damage is already done. Thinkst Canary flips that model. You deploy canaries or canary tokens in minutes, drop them into your environment, and then forget about them. When an attacker touches one, they tip their hand and you get a single high-confidence alert exactly when it matters. There's virtually no admin overhead, almost no false positives, and that's why canaries are used by some of the best security teams in the world, on all 7 continents. If you want early warning that actually works, check them out at canary.tools or see what real users are saying at canary.love.
Like for the past 3-4 weeks, I've been telling my wife, this weekend the US is attacking Iran, and she's like, come on, I cut the crap. And I'm like, no, it's this weekend. The weekend comes, nothing happens. And I'm like, again, no, it's the next weekend. So this week on Tuesday, I say, wife, this weekend on Saturday, they are attacking Iran. And she's like, come on. I wake up this morning, just 11 a.m. I go to the living room. Wife is watching a talk show or something. So I'm like looking at my phone, and it says like 6 minutes ago from the White House, a statement about the United States attacking. And I'm like, wife, they're attacking Iran. And she's like, come on, not again. And then, no, this time it's for real. Look. Like, let me switch to the news. And she's like, oh my God, you're right.
Oh my God. Finally.
Wow.
I like this. Wife, we're attacking.
Hello everyone, this is episode 87 of The Three Body Problem on Saturday, February 28th. For me, it's 9 in the morning here in Phoenix, Arizona.
Woof.
On a day when I woke up to news that we declared war in partnership with Israel, declared war on Iran, and we've spent the last hour, 2 hours just kind of scrolling through X and social media platforms, looking at live footage of stuff dropping from the sky and explosions everywhere. There's a lot of rumors about the Ayatollah being dead. Juanito, you were kind of, Costin was expecting it. You were expecting it? What were they saying at the dinner parties out here in Washington?
At the embassies.
I had a good friend who said, we're attacking Iran in 1.5 weeks. And I, with zero skepticism, just looked at my calendar and was like, 1.5 weeks. Boop, like put it down and forgot about this shit. And then I'm like, well, would you look at that? I don't know, man. I just, imagine, how Dick Cheney would have felt if he were still alive, getting to watch this all go down. Some people just work their whole lives towards something and they just never get to see the fruits of their labor. Right.
War is not something to be like, war is
look,
war is
I'm being glib about it. We've been waiting for this shit for
we've had Hamid on the call since during the protests.
Months.
For months we've been watching this build up. It's been kind of like if it doesn't happen now, this doesn't happen there. This one felt real though, and I want to start off just for our audience. Has there been any sort of, I know it's very, very early in the game, any sort of cyber components that's already been documented? I saw some informational things on some apps and some websites being compromised and pushed with manipulated news and so on. So we know that that's kind of like the initial things that happened. Have you seen anything, Costin?
There's a lot of discussion, but as always, it's hard to know what to believe and what not. One thing I saw for sure is that X has been blocking some Iranian bots that were trying to spread some messaging. I saw some kind of PR coming out of the office of the Ayatollah saying that it's true that we lost some commanders, but it's not a big deal. Like they'll be replaced or something along these lines, which I don't know. But
imagine the morale among those commanders. Just like you just get replaced. It's fine.
I would expect that the things that you want to drop right now in Iran have been pre-positioned months, if not weeks ago. I mean, this video of Trump announcing the operation, I think it's been recorded weeks ago. I don't think it's something he recorded last night.
It's like one of those Osama tapes where you're like, we're trying to figure out.
You probably have different versions. Like you pre-record a bunch of them, and like, I mean, let's be serious. It must have been like 2-3 a.m. in Washington D.C. when this started. So I think it was pre-recorded. He didn't do it live for sure. It's been pre-recorded for weeks, and I guess he pre-recorded different versions, like I don't know, more serious, grave, less. They just
Funny
drop the one
one,
that fits the situation.
like one where
Funny
he's
one.
clowning around. He's just,
I don't know. I don't know.
Sorry, guys. I know that I'm trying to take this in stride and lightly, and it's war. It's just like my 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 caring has been diluted over months now over this shit, and
All
I
wars or just this one? Like, I feel
well,
like we're becoming desensitized to, like,
I'm
going
definitely
into
generally
Venezuela, killing 100
desensitized.
people. Yeah.
I bet 100 people, bro. Like, you know, I'm generally desensitized, but more than anything, in this particular case, we've just been like, we've been dooming and glooming about the coming of it, and so much of it has also been hyperbolized in a way that like makes it hard to retain that sense, right? Like when everybody's talking about how like this will be World War III, and then we watch like this kind of slow burn into World War III, and then like everything things happen, and you're kind of like, well, that's like a little bit, but not enough, and then bigger things happened a little bit, and not, and like it kind of, I haven't heard any realistic and measured assessments of why this matters, why it's the worst thing, or why it's the best thing, or what actual effects we might be looking at. So it makes me just kind of pull out of the conversation entirely, because the terms just they're just too hyperbolic, right? It's like talking to people who still like early international relations folks, right? Like who start talking about something and they act like every war and every bombing and every misstep is somehow the end of the world, and something like completely earth shattering. It's like, yeah, you forgot that we've done this a million fucking times, that everybody postures, that people constantly say that if God forbid you cross this red line, it will be the end of the world. And the only people who take them seriously are like the UN and some European, diplomats. And then everybody else is like, yeah, you're not going to do shit, and it's not going to amount to
Embassy
shit.
parties.
All right. Like,
Uh,
yeah, I'm not buying it. I'm curious about the economic realities and the logistical fallout for the whatever new axis of evil, if you will. Not to bring the specters of Bush Jr. into this, but I'm not really ready. I'm not primed on the doomsday shit right now.
I Unlike Costin, I'm a lot more skeptical of stuff I see on X and some of these videos we see on X. So I'm prefacing all of this by saying a lot of it is AI generated. You can't figure out what is what anymore.
We're not
especially
using
when
UFOs to bomb Iran.
when you're fast scrolling. But what we've seen is like the Palm Jumeirah in Dubai got hit by a falling Shahed drone. Like good, like multiple angle footage of this like Fairmont hotel in the Palm and burning. And my question to you, and we've seen some footage out of Bahrain and so on. My question to you is, do you feel like the Iranian response feels very, very odd? Like, why Dubai?
You're asking me?
Costin, we were having this conversation earlier.
We were just chatting. I was thinking that this feels very, very odd. Initially, in the Romanian news, they were saying that Iran attacked first, and both me and my wife were thinking, why would Iran attack first? It's just provoking the U.S. and Israel to just wipe them out. Like, it makes no sense. What makes more sense is maybe them paying like a number of commanders in Iran to launch a few strikes against pretty much all neutral or moderately friendly nations in the Middle East, just to antagonize them and rally them against Iran. So they're like firing drones, Shahed drones against, military bases, US military bases in Kuwait, in Qatar, in UAE and Saudi, whatever. I understand that, but like for sure, some of these drones will not hit their targets. Like we've seen information that the Kuwait International Airport got hit. This is just antagonizing all the Arab nations in the Middle East against Iran. Just it is speeding up the downfall of the regime. Like when all these Arabic nations, they just get together and they start supporting the U.S.-Israeli coalition, I mean, Iran will be alone. It's just like speeding up their downfall. It's very strange.
We for folks in the US who might be worrying about blowback here in the US, Juanito, do we know of any of these kind of so-called in the past pre-positioning things that we would constantly hear of, like for instance the typhoons, where the Chinese pre-positioning in case of a Taiwan invasion? Has there been documented cases of Iranians doing intrusions here in the US as part of that pre-positioning? There were some, I remember some reports of like a New York dam incident that was blamed on Iranians, and there was some like some Unitronics PLC stuff that CISA had put out some advisories on. But do you know of any cases where Americans should be worried about Iranians doing some sort of cyber things here in the US?
No, not to be too dismissive, but like I think the things we've seen, and you took the New York dam thing right off the tip of my tongue, but we have definitely seen the Iranians kind of seek out critical targets like that. I think the what characterizes a lot of those operations is actually a complete lack of restraint. And so when you talk about pre-positioning, right, the whole point of pre-positioning is you understand the target, you figure out why it's strategically valuable, you figure out what you can do, what kind of toolkit you're going to need, you place yourself right at this critical juncture, and then you leave this capability dormant for the right time. And we've, folks who are more avid Iranian watchers might correct me, but I don't know that I've seen the Iranians have the self-restraint to stop at that point and wait. And obviously, you can't have a perfect answer for that. But considering the levels of escalation we have already seen and some of these like red line crossings, quote unquote, of the past months, if not year, I really doubt that they're sitting on some capability they have just not chosen to use just yet. And you have to consider that despite all of the like hype and hullabaloo that goes into, all this like potential damage to critical infrastructure, it's not easy. It's not simple. It takes recon and it takes preparation. And if you want to do some really like legit shit, it takes some proper components built for these sorts of things. It's not just like, oh, we found one place and we flip one switch and like the entire eastern seaboard is out of power, right? So I personally think that the concern in that sense is overblown. What we have known in the past is like Iran would resort to using its proxies to cause damage. And it was mostly physical damage, logistics, right? Like, you had the Houthis, stopping ships. You had folks sort of messing with global shipping routes, or you had Hezbollah at large, staging terrorist attacks in Latin America and Europe and other places in order to essentially strike back in a completely, you hit them on one side and they hit you on the complete other side of the world. And I think that's why we've been standing this whole beeper situation and sort of this amazing Israeli coup in having essentially dismantled Hezbollah in one fell swoop. But a big part of that, one of the reasons that was truly such an unbelievable win is that Hezbollah was the most capable, well-resourced force projection arm of the Iranian regime. That was the one that you would go to for the international terrorist attacks. That was the one you would go to. The real threat against Israel wasn't Hamas and these other ones. It was, hey, you have this well-trained, massive army in the south of Lebanon with missiles and all this shit and force projection capabilities internationally over the past like 30 fucking years that will strike. And the fact that the Israelis were able to essentially dismantle that has also taken a lot of Iran's options off the table of being able to slap back in whatever underhanded way. It's not to say they can't do anything. I'm just saying, the board has been redrawn drastically since the Israeli war on Iran, and I just don't know what kind of options Iran is realistically sitting on at this point.
On the cyber front, what are their capabilities? Like, what have the Israelis seen actually done on the ground on the cyber front?
Kostin, have you seen anything like all that significant? Because I'm about to be really dismissive, and to be fair, I woke up today and I'm still finding out about shit that's like been happening. So I don't feel like I'm
Fair.
horribly well informed.
Fair. The
But when it
question is,
comes
how
to
capable are
cyber,
they? Are they to be
capable.
dismissed? Are they to be taken seriously? Or because for years, I go back to the North Koreans. For years, we dismissed them as these dumb moles without internet, and then suddenly they're exploiting smart contracts at a level where like, holy moly!
Right.
I'm asking about like capabilities.
Look, you have a wide gamut of capabilities in Iran, and I think I would refer people who really want to answer this question, like a good answer for this question, to the past two episodes we have had with Hamid in this show, because I think Hamid has a much better sense of the talent and talent pipeline and the use of talent in Iran, and the different types of groups that you get. So we have quite a bit of understanding, I think, about different like shell company structures and what kind of, special folks have run interesting operations and not so interesting operations out of Iran. What I'll say is it's not like they lack intelligent people, but when you have a regime that's that universally kind of disliked, what you end up with is just a very difficult space of recruitment, difficult space of generating sympathy from folks who have options. So what you kind of end up with are, they do have a lot of cyber teams, and we definitely, like, especially Israel is constantly getting hit with, the kind of opportunistic bullshit where it's like, oh, we took a dating site database and we've outed all these like LGBTQ people. And it's like, just things where you're like, well, this is shitty, right? Like, it's shitty. You're willing to do shitty things. You came in, like, you wiped a university and like things like that. But they always try to make it seem 10 feet tall. So it makes them look kind of childish and weak and not, it's not a capability that you're really truly fearful of, as much as like it's a nuisance, and sometimes that nuisance is going to be opportunistically outsized. Have they never done anything interesting? No, I wouldn't say that, right? Like, but the more interesting things have been things like the Sands Casino attack way back in the day, or obviously Saudi Aramco and Ras Gas and stuff like that. But like, we're talking about things from years ago. And I don't know. I don't really respect the capabilities there. I think the interesting things they've done have been more traditionally like intelligence operations or sabotage operations that are much more physical rather than cyber. And cyber, to me, like, yeah, I know that we should respect the North Koreans more, and we may have like misread that capability and how it advanced, how quickly. But I still look at Iran as like a, C team just kind of trying to like,
Costin,
piss
you
people
agree with
off and
that?
do nonsense.
When you think of Vicente's quadrant, the Gartner quadrant of where APTs live, where do you put the Iranians? Just based on everything we know.
Well, historically, the Iranians have been kind of a guerrilla-style operations, mostly because they combine things such as direct hacking with a bit of tooling and malware. But like, let's say the kind of malware that we have seen coming out of groups such as Oil Rig, or I don't know, Prince of Persia and the likes, it's not, let's say, the super top high-end stuff that we have seen from, let's say, some Chinese groups or whatever. On the other hand, this doesn't mean that necessarily they are not advanced. You see, actually, Chris is saying that he worked with a number of super smart Iranian security professionals, and he wouldn't underestimate them. I have absolutely the same experience, but like, and of course, Hamid aside, but I've met and I've known other security professionals from Iran, and there are a number of very, very talented, very skilled, very smart people over there. I guess that nobody really wants to waste their talents working for the regime, or you know, the pay is probably not the same. And I think we talked about this in the past. It's not the same as in the private sector, working for the government in Iran. So why waste your talents doing that when in theory you can work for a private company, or even maybe for a company outside Iran and get paid in crypto, or something like that. So maybe capabilities are not on the level of maybe China or Russia or other nations. But Iran, I think, has always been in the range where there's no fear of retaliation, meaning that if they deploy wipers, they don't care. While, I don't know, for other nations, maybe they're like thinking twice before hitting a hospital with a wiper or a ransomware. So that kind of fear of retaliation does not exist for Iran. Which
Pariah status, right? Like you've
pariah
already
status,
designated them that
they're
way.
Makes them a
designated,
lot more
they're
dangerous, though.
sanctioned, which is exactly what I was thinking. They're probably a bit more dangerous. But at the same time, because of the sanctions and because of the internet cuts in Iran and all the other issues, the capabilities, maybe they're not the best of the best.
Fair enough.
What am I trying to say here? There's when you say that makes them a little more dangerous, right? Like this reminds me of the discussion around like the cyber power paper back in the day, and I was very critical of it, perhaps a little too glib, but something that we don't think about, at least in like the academic literature, when we talk about cyber capabilities and cyber power, is that willingness to use a thing is its own kind of filter and metric when we talk about capability, right? And I think that that's a major criticism against countries like the United States, in comparison to something like Iran and North Korea. Like I would put them as sort of like diametric opposites, right? Like you've got like your Germanys and your US's on one end, and you have your, and maybe that's a little unfair to the US, but and then you've got like North Korea and Iran on the like far other extreme. And it's interesting, right? Because you can say these folks don't have great cyber power by traditional standards. Like how much are you sitting on as far as like exploits or more importantly, right, capability generation, right? Because like having exploits on the shelf is kind of like a poor way to characterize some of this stuff. But how quickly can I generate a capability to hit a kind of target that I'm interested in? How much of a toolkit do I have? How many operators do I have? How much do I control the terrain? Like the US is this like unbelievably outsized power, but almost never will we approve, or at least in the past, have we approved an operation to actually take place. And you compare that to someone like Iran or North Korea, like more so Iran now, where you go, not that great capability, lots of PowerShell and .NET bullshit, no real, like maybe an exploit from time to time, but not any like sizable exploit generation capability. They don't own the terrain, right? There's no NSA style mega collection and targeting, blah, 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 but they're willing to hit whatever the fuck comes in front of them. And when you put those two side by side, you kind of do have to ask this like humbling question of how much power projection pound for pound ultimately happens between those two. So I do think there's something interesting there. There is something worth discussing there. And as much as like folks might joke about like, oh, Mr. America, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I admire my country. I love what we can do. I do think we tend to not make the best use of the resources that we've got. And in that, I don't think the North Koreans or the Iranians make the best use of what they've got, in the sense that they overuse it, and they do so almost ridiculously, but they fucking use it, right? Like it's not capabilities just languishing on the shelf, right?
Well, exactly. Like why would you use a F-35, F-16 when you have the TR-3B Astra?
Why not all of them, bro?
Well, this whole notion of like capabilities and intent came to mind with the Venezuela as well. It's like the US military had that capability. They've proven it, but I just read the New York Times just did a whole retrospective on Maduro's last days, right? Like he miscalculated that the intent was there, and that's the issue. That's kind of what's coming into my brain, is that I feel like we're miscalculating the Iranians' danger and intent by downplaying this. They're not that sophisticated. Their internet is shit. Blah 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 blah. And I'm wondering.
Well, put it differently. I get your drift, and but I think I think there's several issues that are dangerous of getting conflated. We may not be analyzing the situation with the greatest wisdom. We may be a little too blunt in how we look at this. And the Iranians may not have much going for them, right? Like those two things, like the fact that we're
all
being
correct.
Yeah, like the fact that we're not being very sharp analysts, or that we may be a little careless in how we go about this, can be true, and the Iranians cannot have much going for them. And I think that that's almost certainly true when you consider the kind of decimation that, like, I mean, they have been shown to be weak. They have lost a great deal of capabilities. They already have fought a war quite recently where, you know, I'm sorry, if the Israelis are already decimating your country, that's not the time when you usually sit on capabilities, right? Like that's, you know, once you're already getting bombed in the fucking homeland, that's usually when you pull out, you know, like whatever the fuck you've got, like now's the time. So the fact that we already saw that happen and they were proven quite weak at this point, like, yeah, we might have taken our time to show up, but I think that also comes with the comfort of knowing that, like, well, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to do? Right? Like they can try to get, you know, different arms from the Russians. They can try to elicit some help from different folks, but they're not suddenly going to generate some outsized capability that wasn't already there. And, you know, had we had no skirmishes with Iran, and the Israelis had no skirmishes with Iran in the past, you know, 2-3 years, then yeah, you're going into this a little bit blind and with a little bit more respect, where you go, maybe we try to fly the first ship in there and holy shit, there's like all this anti-air stuff that we never even thought of, or like a fucking missile shoots out of wherever that we didn't even know they had, right? They've got nukes in Cuba, right? Like that's where you go, holy shit, we really miscalculated. But since you've already hit them several times and you've already seen how much of a straw man it is, like I feel like, not to undersell it, not to, you know, there's people in harm's way, and there's a lot of servicemen that are, you know, it's easy for us to sit in the comfort of our homes and play armchair quarterback to a war that we don't have shit to do with. But I also just don't see this, like, pound for pound. I'd be surprised if there are many surprises left.
That suggests, Costin, are we looking at not a very short war, right? Are you expecting this to be drawn out? I mean, the Russians are so busy in having their own problems. They're not going to come to the aid of the Iranians. I don't know if the Chinese will sit this one out, but I mean, the whole world war will always happen is on the cards, or you think this is a short conflict?
Shout outs to our friend Noam in Israel, who told me, he said, like, this Saturday we find out if there's going to be war or no war. And if there's going to be war, he thinks it will last for maybe 4 or 5 days the most. It cannot be longer than 4 or 5 days. So if he predicted the whole thing correctly, maybe I hope, or I don't know, maybe he also has the timing right as well, the duration of the war. So again, I think
the concern isn't the war, right? Like, which is just to say, right? Like, what are we counting as the war? Is the war the time it takes us to fly in there and, like, you know, blow up a bunch of like the traditional structures and and disarm the military? Okay, that can take 4 days. It can take 2 weeks. But then the real question is, like, you're talking about toppling a regime that's been in power for decades. And then, so yeah, maybe you go in there and decapitate the whole fucking thing in 45 minutes for all it matters. And then comes the real question of what the fuck happens to, like, the largest country in the Middle East with such a repressive regime that you have essentially no shadow government. Like, you don't have another party that's been preparing that might have gone into power, you know, the next election cycle, right? Like, that's the real problem with places like Venezuela or Iran, where it's like you just have not allowed any kind of alternative structures to develop. So when this kind of shit pops off, and they do it on purpose, right? Like, when this kind of shit pops off, the question is, well, so who exactly is gonna manage this shit? And, like, who takes care of what inevitably becomes a humanitarian crisis, a crisis of like, where are these people getting food?
They figured
Who's
it out in
running?
Venezuela.
Did they? I mean,
Well, the country is functioning.
It wasn't before we took Maduro out, so I think that's a really that's a very rosy way of looking at it. That place had no food and no medicine already. It was already a humanitarian crisis. So I think we just kind of waltzed in and took this dude out of the country and then went, good luck, guys, and like fucked off. And I don't think any of us know whether it's in a better or worse place than it was before. We just kind of like we literally parachuted it and took like one piece off the chessboard and went like, good luck, and fucked off. But with a thing like Iran, right? Okay, the people rise up, they get annoyed, they get tired, they take down the government. Okay, and that's you basically just hit like a reset button on governance. And then the question comes, who goes into power? Who fills the power vacuum? How much of a consensus can you build around these people? How much support do they get? How many resources does this country actually have? Right? When the problem with those sorts of, bizarre forms of government is there's this opacity as to how resources are being spent. And usually there tends to be mania around spending things on like ridiculous bullshit, like, I don't know, a nuclear program that never fully gets off the ground, right? Like, so how much money has been wasted? Like, you're already sanctioned. You're already living in the black market and trying to like make your money in semi-illicit ways and through a lot of trade that's obviously not legitimate. And you're wasting it on bullshit. And you have religious clerics and folks who are spending this money in ways that you don't know. So tomorrow we get some grand democratic leader that rises up from the ashes of the Iranian resistance. And then by the time you get that person situated, you're finding out just how big the hole is, just how many problems there are. What does it mean to have governance? You're creating a government out of like whole cloth. Which of the people that were there were sympathetic to the religious clerics? What of the army can you still trust? Right? Like the vacuum is vast and difficult. It's like, and frankly, like I would be looking at like, how's Syria doing right now? Right? Like that's a good example, right?
So Libya is still not functioning.
The reason to care is that that's how you end up with things like ISIS, right? If you leave the power vacuum and you just go like, hey, yep, we got rid of that little pesky problem for you. Now you guys sort yourselves out. Bye. Right? Like what you usually, it's not like a perfect, organic, fair form of government just rises from the ashes. It's a very delicate situation in which you can very easily fall into this kind of mob rule and some kind of grand force that comes around with, what was ISIS, right? Like folks in Iraq and other parts of like Saddam's army and folks who were just suddenly disenfranchised but still had arms and power and nothing to lose, who just, started ransacking, raping, and pillaging through everything. And you go, well, who the fuck's going to handle this? So I think that's the real situation. That's why we said, a few weeks ago, we were talking about, a few weeks or months ago, we were talking about how like the Israeli influence ops in Iran were suddenly like almost like pulling back. Like we saw them like, not quite as active, not quite. And maybe that's all coincidence, but I do think that you have this, what I might glibly refer to as like the South Korea problem, where you go, yeah, we want this North Korean government to like fold and stop being so shitty and this like constant problem for us. But if North Korea does fold, South Korea now has a massive humanitarian crisis on its hands, right? Like, so do you really want to be the person left holding that bag? And I think that's a question that Israel's had to face quite a bit, which is like, yeah, they don't want the Iranians around, like the Iranian regime. They don't want to deal with this bullshit anymore. They want that threat to be over. But who the fuck is going to be left holding the bag for Iran? Because I don't see Israel dying to set up shop in Iran and play some kind of like, puppet like colonial ordinance. Though, unless we're installing Marco Rubio as viceroy of Tehran, like we're going to, someone's going to have to figure this shit out. Yeah.
Is he still the national archivist? Archivist?
Did you see
Is that the right
did you
word?
see the video of like somebody AI generated a video of like Marco Rubio finding out he has to run Anthropic, and it's like a whole like hustle like
Fat
grind of him
with the
with the
glasses, right?
hoodie and like
Yeah.
it's fucking excellent, man.
All right, let's segue from the war talk and talk a little bit about Anthropic. The War
Yeah,
Department just yesterday.
why would Marco Rubio run Anthropic?
Yeah, you
Because
tell me.
Marco
What's going
Rubio
on?
Marco Rubio is this sad man who gets every job that like someone will just like fuck something up and then we go,
Well,
hey
the guy
Marco.
who the signal chat fuck up turned into Marco Rubio's job, right? The national security
Yeah.
advisor was sent to be the UN ambassador, and Marco Rubio took over that job, and he's been like the viceroy of Venezuela. It's like
He's the
taking on all
viceroy of
these extra jobs.
Venezuela. I don't know, dude. Like I am, let's be totally clear here. I am not the US political correspondent because frankly, I am trying to bury my head so far underground right now that
Why?
Yes.
Because I
Why?
can't
We need
handle it.
Mr. America now more than ever.
I cannot handle it. I cannot
What's
handle
going
it.
on?
I can't possibly handle it. Like it just doesn't, this shit is it's all a little too much for me. And
Well,
also,
you're Mr. AI, so let's
I
throw
love
in
it. I
the
love it. I
throw out
love
the
that
Mr.
I can-
America hat, put on your Mr. AI hat, and tell me what's going on with Anthropic and the Department of War and OpenAI and the whole government's stance that your legal language doesn't forbid me from doing anything that I have to do.
Okay, so I have no fucking clue what is happening, really, because who does? And I don't really know who intends what in this situation. But what is the situation as we understand it, or as it's been presented to us so far, is that Anthropic, having always been this like very genuinely and maybe a little over the top invested in guardrails and safeguards and like, AI needs to be built responsibly and it shouldn't contribute to this, that, and the other. Sometimes to even a caricature of itself and how excessive it can be, right? Like we've joked about it here about like the AI's like ethical the ethics of turning the AI off and like what it feels and what its consciousness is like, right? And like sort of this like ridiculous over concern with these things. But in this case, it seems that I don't think they were jumping, they were too over the top. They just seem to have said that like they didn't want Claude to be used, for autonomous weapons or for mass surveillance. And somebody, and let me know if I'm mischaracterizing this, but like somebody in the Department of War lost their absolute shit at the idea that a U.S. company would deign to tell the U.S. government and the U.S. military how they use whatever the fuck it is that they want to use. That has snowballed into this like bizarre statement by Pete Hegseth about how like they're designating Anthropic a supply chain risk and like no one can work with Anthropic, and if you want to do business with the U.S. government, you can't work with Anthropic. Now, that's all of it at sort of face value. Now, and I stop there because this is one of those moments when I look at the Trump administration and I go, do you guys need a minute? Because I think my feeling, my just read of this is this administration has been working very clearly to enable the AI companies to be our like national advantage in this war against China and to be like the main economic driver in this very scary situation that we have in the markets right now. A lot of mania, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of fear about bubbles and whatever. And you have David Sachs and all these other folks and the president quite expressly supporting essentially this idea of like, let the fucking AI companies cook and let them do what they need so that we can all succeed. So to then have the Department of War coming out and putting what is essentially, I mean, if they had...
the supply chain risk thing, is that like sanctions? Is it...
Well,
Sounds like sanctions.
But here's the thing, guys, like how... And that's why I said, like, does the administration need a minute? because I don't know that Pete Hegseth has the power or the ability, or that there is a mechanism by which to do what he's suggesting, first of all. Second, there's no way in hell the Supreme Court would ever uphold this. Even this Supreme Court would be like, that's not really how this shit works. You can't tell other companies that they can't work with an American company using their service. Moreover, the language is so broad that the US government would not be able to do business with any company that owns computers. Like, everyone's using Claude code. Everybody's using Claude. All that shit runs on AWS and Google. Dude, you need to fix that. Let's talk about that separately. Right? Like,
Mr.
I'm just saying.
I'm just like looking in case the Department of War needs some help or whatever. Just to be clear, I'm not using Claude.
TLP Black can be
TLP
brought into
Black,
the
I don't know,
DOW. Right?
We have, like, everybody has their
Everybody
like
has Claude code.
stray kids and whatever. But, yeah.
TLP Black is your stray kid.
It's Dan. Dan Demeter is the stray kid.
Dan is the Claudio fan. He calls it Claudio, yes.
Dude, I use Claude code all day, every day. So my point here is just, this to me seems brash and reckless and very much a like cut your nose to spite your face type situation on a variety of levels. Anthropic right now is ahead of everybody else in applications, in actually being useful. So the idea that you're going to ban or hamstring or over the top gesture at the inviability of what is currently the most successful on a practical sense AI company is, I mean, it's unconscionable, right? Like, when this whole administration is teetering on the edge of needing to find great alpha in AI, to take the one company that's pretty much ready to IPO, that's actually generating a lot of revenue, that people are genuinely excited about marveling its shit into every product on earth, and say, oh, you can't work with the US government and no one that works with the US government can work with you. That's insane. Like it's genuinely just like not cool for everything else that the administration's trying to do. So I'm actually expecting, like, I'm trying not to take it too seriously because I'm kind of expecting people in the Trump administration to tell Pete Hegseth to like chill the fuck out a little bit. Or, whatever. I'm not going to say it, but like, there's terms here to parse. I will also say that, and this is a conversation I was having with Gregor Stewart about a week or so ago, which is like, I think even Sam Altman and OpenAI should be cheering for Anthropic to move forward and have a successful IPO, because they would be the first ones to prove the market, right? Like, they would be the ones to, they have a narrower set of use cases. They've burned less money than OpenAI. Maybe they're not necessarily as consumer focused. But if Anthropic comes out and IPOs at a fucking $500 billion or whatever, it proves the market that OpenAI so desperately needs to be proven for the levels of insane investment that it's been burning and asking for and using. So like, there's definitely a dependence here where, Sam and Dario might not hold hands at the World Economic Forum or wherever the fuck they were, but they definitely need somebody to succeed and prove that there is legitimate money and use and delta, like alpha here, that I just don't know, man. Like, this really seems like, I just don't see this as a calculated move. This isn't Project Maven. Like, this is ridiculous, right?
There's a chance, I think, that this is just part of the negotiation, and somehow they don't like the way that Dario negotiates, the fact that he doesn't pick up the phone when they call him and things like that. They've been complaining about publicly on X. And what makes me think is that just Sam Altman announced, I think today, that he managed to work out the deal with the Department of War. So
24 hours after saying that he was lockstep in tandem with Anthropic's stance, he put out a statement saying, I'm agreeing with Anthropic that these are two red lines. 24 hours later, he announced that the Department of War...
But he found like a way to work out the deal, which makes me think that, if Sam Altman can work out the deal, if Gemini, if whatever, they can work out the deal with the Department of War, surely Anthropic can work out the deal with the Department of War. It's probably just
So
part of a negotiation between them.
I hope so, and maybe you're. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if you're completely right about some of like the negotiating feels for Anthropic. When you say surely, like when we say, oh, surely, like that's when I tend to worry, especially about the Valley folk, because look, I like Anthropic. I love Claude Code. I love Opus 4.6, and I'm using this shit all day, every day, and telling people to use it all the time. I have seen Anthropic in the past make some less than stellar choices when it comes to its own business viability, in ways that, I think if you had a little more experience in the real business world, or if
What are you
you had
talking
a
about?
better sense, like, just an unwillingness to do price discovery, an unwillingness to just kind of to get real about certain aspects of business that I think would have allowed Anthropic to scale
Are you
and
talking
to
about
really,
allowing people to mooch on it and kind of like build on
yeah,
top of it without like clear like that? Is
yeah.
that what you're describing?
Sort of. Like, I think there's a lot of small choices when it comes to, like, discussions of like model degradation, or like the API stuff, and like the different account types, and the prices and whatnot, that, to me just seem like a little too simplistic for what I would expect from seasoned operators. I'm like business operators. I'm not saying that they need to follow the same shitty business style that everybody else does. If they have their way of doing things, then good on you, and like do your
There's a
thing.
reason
And if
they're close to IPOing, right? I mean, they've made better business decisions than a lot of the other frontier labs are there.
yes, at the scale that they want to play in the areas they want to play. Like, part of the thing here is, and I've been saying it for like more than a year on this podcast, right? Like, if you remember, I used to bitch about how silly I thought Anthropic was for like not embracing web search, for not trying to move into deep research, because like they were so hyper focused on coding that they weren't trying to find feature parity when it came to consumer use cases. Now we're seeing what the value of that is, right? Their models are clearly spectacularly capable in solving coding problems in a more systemic fashion than just like writing pieces of code that are meant to be copy pasted. Like, these things are actually building whole tools, whole cloth. But which, I mean, again, was a really good move on their part, despite what I was saying, because if you think about it, right, coding is the lingua franca of technology. If you can solve the coding problem, you have solved a great deal of the problems when it comes to computing. So clearly they've gone about that the right way. I just think these are the moments that like show a certain savviness or unsavviness about business that isn't about business itself. It's the hobnobbing and the buying the person a drink and the going to the thing and being there in the black tie event and hugging the right person and picking up the phone when somebody calls, and that makes all of us feel dirty, but that is the real business thing, right? That is, you're not there to be COO, CEO, CFO, CBO, whatever the fuck, to set the price and your marketing strategy. You're there to like be the representative that can sit in a room and make some difficult decisions. And Tim Cook is like the proto example of that right now. Tim Cook has been very proactive about being there for this administration and having, and showing up with a gold bar and sitting down and, yes, Mr. President, what should we do? Because like, whether we like it or not, like that's what it takes to run a multi-trillion-dollar company in in this business climate. And if Dario doesn't want to do that, okay, but you are, when there's no red line between Moscow and the US, you're much more likely to misinterpret a military exercise as an opportunity to end the planet, right? To take a
By the way,
metaphor here.
one of the angles we missed here is that the whole charade started when an article appeared saying that the U.S. government, the military, were using Claude to plan the attack on Maduro, if you remember. And then Anthropic immediately, freaked out and said that they don't want their models to be used for war. They don't want their models to be used to plan the killing of people, and they don't want their models to be used for other Maduro-like operations in the future. And this started the whole shit and the whole discussion.
But look at that, right? Like, that's a really interesting thing to note. And I'd be very curious to go look back at that article and what the sourcing on that article was, right? Like, that's one of those moments where if we wanted to put our tinfoil hats on, we say, oh, surely Sama or Google or somebody threw that rock and like threw the bait and Anthropic bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was just like a bullshit fucking story that some random reporter was like, you think they use Claude Code to do this? And like, you just write this shit up. And then somebody not that savvy when it comes to certain PR matters and political matters takes the bait and goes, yeah, we're not going to whatever. And you go, dude, didn't you watch what happened with Project Maven? Didn't you watch what happened with Google? And like, we're all going to walk out and like, we won't use AI for like the Department of Defense, whatever. And that was in much more reasonable times. That shit didn't play well. And you eventually end up doing an about face and you circle right back and you go, oh my God, it just so happens that you're like the largest purchaser of technology on earth, right? Like, I don't know what I was thinking. So you can have red lines and you can have terms and whatever the fuck you want, but those are not battles in this political climate. Those are not battles you're going to win in the public. There's no one to appeal to. You can have that conversation behind closed doors. You can set it in contractual requirements, and you can find comfortable ways to signal that to the people who are, writing heartwarming messages outside of the Anthropic offices in San Francisco in chalk. But like, that isn't how you handle business with the US government under this, administration. It just seems silly.
Isn't it appropriate to ask that for your software not to be used for domestic spying or for your software not to be used for automated war? Is it appropriate?
I think it's not appropriate not to ask, and I tell you why. Because they actually won.
You give me a double negative there. I want
that was a little sneaky there. Hey!
I want to be clear.
Slow down there.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is the Department of War signed contracts with 4 companies to provide AI to the military. There was they signed up with Gemini, they signed up with Anthropic, with OpenAI, and with Grok, right? And when you sign up with the Department of War, what do you think the model will be used for? Like what? To make popcorn, or like to draw memes of Anakin Skywalker and Padme, or what? I think that you need to have like some real expectations, and you need to understand that the model will be used by the Department of War to plan whatever war-like tactics they have. If you think it will only be used theoretically for coding, and you're going to use it to develop COBOL code that will run the databases, that will store all the inventories of ammo that you still have available for your armies, I think that's a bit naive. So when you sign up these contracts, I think you need to also understand what the models will be used for. And keep in mind that Anthropic was the first company to be approved with their model for classified settings. They were the first one, and I think later maybe Google, and Grok was only approved for that 3 days ago, which is maybe one of the reasons why they aren't using Grok yet. And the other one being, according to Grok itself, that Grok was not very politically correct, was more on the politically incorrect. So Claude was more politically correct, which is why they were using it initially in the classified intelligence settings, which is like fun to know.
So this is one of those things where like I agree and disagree, and I think it's important to kind of highlight to get a little more practical, because I think this is kind of like, yes, like who disagrees that maybe you shouldn't use our technology to do fully autonomous weapons or mass surveillance. At the same time,
Americans.
Though, yeah, at the
other
same
nations,
time,
the other bastards,
that doesn't matter.
That doesn't count as surveillance. That's just watching.
That's just it's customer service. But
you're only going to be deeply concerned anyway. So,
dude, but let's also take a step back. How the fuck are you supposed to use Claude to do either of those things? You know what I mean? like you don't directly use Claude to, like, you're not like, look, here's a weapon system, Claude code. This is the API for this, like, Abrams. Find a place to shoot the missile and do so efficiently. Don't make any mistakes. Kill only Russians, right? Like that. Like there is a ridiculousness to this whole discussion that comes, the same thing I was talking about, I was ranting and bitching about in the last episode, right? Where you start getting high on your own supply, you drown in your own fucking AGI-pilled Kool-Aid, and start to have conversations that don't make any fucking sense. Like, what are we talking about? You're not just going to turn on Claude Code inside of the Pentagon and it's going to decide, like, where all the warships go, and it's going to start shooting children of different ethnicities.
It's going to be a part of the system that helps decide.
Yeah, but
right?
that's like saying that, like, Excel, like Microsoft Excel is helping to determine, like, what people we kill in war. Sure, there's Excel spreadsheets all over the fucking place, and like it's the same, right? Like, and you can keep tracing that back, right? Like IBM machines were critical in managing the Holocaust, right? But do you then say, like, that kind of oversimplification is okay in the
Excel isn't automating the decision, right? Like, I mean, there's like a little bit of a nuance there.
Neither is this AI shit. You know what I mean? Like, there is, that's where I think we're giving them too much, and we're giving the AI people too much credence, and they're being foolish enough to take the bait. Because what I would have said, were I in Dario's shoes, is, well, of course, we don't want to contribute to these things where we think it's critically important to have, American representatives and humans in the loop making critical life and death decisions and legal decisions. And we trust that those decisions are not going to be fully relegated to AI systems anytime soon. And that's a very political way of stating the reality that we live in, which is that nobody's walking in there and wiring Claude Code to a fucking missile battery and saying, go, kill people, don't make any mistakes, right? Like, we're not there, nor will we be there anytime soon. And saying that kind of shit, like, Dario walked into a trap. They laid out a trap, and that need for, like, being the good guys and talking about safety got the best of them, because what they should have said is, sure, but that's just not how this technology works right now. And we trust that the US government is going to make sound decisions about how it integrates these new and promising technologies into the supply chain of how it manages critical national security. And that would have been the well-tested PR line that you take to that, which is a way of saying, we'll talk about this shit behind closed doors, but that's not how this works anyways. And that would have been it.
So Dario, if you're listening, you need Jags as an advisor. Like,
I don't know about... Well,
it's your only escape.
I will advise for Claude Code fast Opus 4.6 tokens that any day. They're so expensive.
You'll work for tokens.
I will work for
tokens.
We'll work for fast usage Opus 4.6 tokens. Yes, absolutely.
Juanito, you said all of that at the same time. A week ago, we had shares of all the leading cybersecurity firms tumbling because of the Claude Code security that Anthropic shipped. Is that just a market? Because the market response was, holy moly, Anthropic and Claude Code is fixing cybersecurity. We don't need CrowdStrike took a hit. I saw George Kurtz put a whole long thing saying cybersecurity is an ecosystem. You can't replace us, blah blah blah. But we
learned
spooked.
so much. We learned so much in that. So, like, I definitely want to talk about the market. I definitely want to talk about the response. But also, let me take a minute to say that one of the things we learned in all of this is that George Kurtz doesn't really know how to use AI at all. Like, it was like George Kurtz is a little too far back in the, like, he's in one of those boomer style situations where you're like, well, I asked the AI and the AI said it would never do that. And you go, Oh, George, just go back to racing. Like, I try not to talk shit about CrowdStrike because like it just feels it feels undignified in the sense of like everybody knows we're competitors and like there's been enough like bullshit. Like whatever, dude. But I thought that was like a funny moment of like, all right, Grandpa, let's get you back to the racetrack, right? Like, don't worry about it. Now, let's talk about the market itself.
Wait, are you saying that you using Claude, like the best of the best, Opus, whatever, will be able to create CrowdStrike's full suite? Given enough time?
No, but I also there's several things there, and you kind of beat me a bit to some of the discussion about the market that I wanted to have, which is there is definitely less of a moat when it comes to developing parity in certain types of technology, without a shadow of a fucking doubt. Right? Like, we could sit here. Look, Kostin, you've built an AV before. You know how some of this shit works. I'm sure that you could massively speed up your ability to catch up in like, building an endpoint, building a platform, building a backend, the database, the engine, the whatever. However, if anybody who understands how this business actually works, would know that building a fancy fucking product is cute and it's nice, and it does not translate into a $50 billion business overnight. Where is your sales force, your auditing and compliance, your SOC 2 certification, your FedRAMP, whatever, your having convinced people to uninstall the agent they have had for X amount of time and install the agent. Like, anybody who's taking on the EDR market right now with AI, what a strong stomach you must have. Like, I admire it. I'm not saying don't try. Sure, new technologies need to come around, and they should. But anyone who's tried this bullshit or who watched how this shit has worked for the past like 8 years knows that nobody wants to install a new agent. Nobody wants to deal with configuring a new agent. It's basically like this real estate battle. And like it's about like established territory and like, if you can get somebody to churn out of CrowdStrike, they're going to churn to SentinelOne or Microsoft or something else that's like already trusted, because whatever CISO decided to create new budget to move one thing to another is like putting themselves on the line as to whether this newfangled technology is going to brick our shit overnight. Is it actually going to detect things? Am I going to get hit with ransomware tomorrow? And people are going to go, why would you take out the trusted incumbent solution we've had for 10 years, 5 years, and so on to give us this newfangled AI bullshit? What did we save? $1 a seat? Well, now we're all fucked. And like, you know what I mean? Like there's so much of the traditional business aspects to it. And there's a lot of like compliance bullshit. Risk insurers, cyber risk insurance. Did you meet the auditing bar for what's appropriate for a board of directors to say that they're properly, doing their due diligence on this tech? So the idea that because I can build a POC or an MVP or even a full fucking product better overnight, I have somehow succeeded is a misunderstanding of enterprise sales. That's just not how enterprise anything works. It can be what consumer shit works. You can make Flappy Birds tomorrow and make 99 cents off a sale and make a fuck ton of money, for sure, without a shadow of a doubt. But that doesn't mean you've taken over the enterprise market or that you will take over the enterprise market in any reasonable amount of time.
So the public markets got this all entirely wrong.
What did I say last time? What a great time to buy stocks at a discount. Enjoy, take it, and but what I will say, and this is the scary other side of it, is we are clearly in mania, in financial mania. Like the reactions are irrational and over the top. Like those are massive numbers to move on the basis of a blog post. And a blog post that introduced a cool capability. I like it. I'm interested. You know, we're testing it. It's great. But like it doesn't make sense to look at the whole of the security space and all of its applications and all of the things that make money. Like, not maybe in the Jen Easterly world of like, oh, if we just rewrite everything in Rust, everything will be perfect. You can think that like auditing code bases is somehow going to solve all cybersecurity. But in the real world of all of these different product categories, that's just not how any of this fucking works. You can fucking try to perfect your code as much as you fucking want, and we're still not gonna solve the majority of the security problems. So I welcome the technology. I'm excited for it, but I don't know what the fuck any of these people are reacting to.
On the startup side, I think there's a lot of nervousness, though. If you're in software composition analysis space, right? If you're in DAST and SAST and all these like vulnerability management, AppSec world, like you got to be nervous when you look at Claude Code, when you look at what's coming out of Aardvark, coming out of Big Sleep and so on. It's like those spaces are eventually going to go away. And there's a lot of multi-billions of cybersecurity investment tied up in those companies building out.
So I think we do well to characterize the nervousness a little bit more, because what I would say is, yes, you are right. But if I started a company right now that does, I don't know, code verification or bug finding or vulnerability, whatever, or like whatever the fuck it is, which like, you know, anybody who's in that like application space is in a very treacherous situation. And there's plenty of memes already, right? Like I saw like a Christian Bale video of like, you know, that feeling when OpenAI releases a free feature that does what my entire startup does, right? Like that's sort of the sentiment right now. It's right to have a certain amount of malaise. That said, I think once again that it's a ridiculous overreaction, B, really a self-defeating mechanism in the AI market, right? Like whenever the big AI companies do this, they wipe out a lot of the entrepreneurs in the space, and then they sit around crying as to why there aren't that many applications of AI being invested into properly, right? Like you are kind of cratering the market that you were hoping to create. At the same time, I said that I want to characterize that fear a little more closely because I think that what we're talking about is the difficulty in getting new investment, because suddenly there's a perception that what you have built and done has no value. And that could be the case, but I think in a lot of cases it isn't, right? Like Aardvark is cool. The Claude Code security is cool. Does it mean that Expo has no value? No. Like there's a competency there, there's a testing harness, there's domain expertise, there's what are presumably existing business contracts. Like there's a lot. Moreover, I would say that if I see Aardvark getting baked into Codex, if I see Claude Code security improving what Opus can do in code assessment and vulnerability discovery and so on, then I would look at Expo and say, your jobs, A, just got easier, they just got cheaper, and there's nobody like you positioned right now to know how to better press that advantage. Because you've been testing, you've been trying, you've built the harnesses, you've done the evals, you've figured out what you do when you get those vulnerabilities and where the friction points are and what the next thing is, because you've been there doing the thing. The only problem you now have is it's a little harder to get investment from a bunch of VCs who just fucking offloaded a bunch of SaaS stocks thinking that, oh my God, the whole cybersecurity market's gonna crater. You go, guys, what the fuck, man? I just need a fucking Series B. Like, what are you people doing?
That's going to lead to consolidation. I mean, that's obviously going to lead to a lot of consolidation. But at the same time, we can't be naive. We can't be naive that the frontier labs are looking around for revenue wherever they can find it. And cybersecurity is a big pie that sits there. And they're not investing in Aardvark and paying for all this talent for some people to go off on a passion project. These things are going to affect businesses significantly. The startup ecosystem. On the flip side, I agree with you. Let me just make one small point because I've always been asking pre-AI, I've always asked the startup founders, like, why would you want to build something that Microsoft can turn on in a minute? Or why would you want to build an email security something that Google can, put 5 engineers in a room to build it?
Yeah.
And they say, listen, these big companies have so much other priorities that these small things are just small things. And so there's a little bit of that there as well, right?
I think that's where you get into a lot of misunderstandings about what makes certain businesses viable and what turns off inexperienced operators from tackling certain kinds of businesses. But I think there's a reason why I'm focusing on the VCs, right? Like the problem here, anybody who's like paid attention to how these startups actually work knows that, like, yeah, Google can come out, like, yeah, you made an email security business and Google comes out tomorrow with a
configuration
better spam filter. And then people go, oh my God, do we even need you anymore? And you go, yes, because it doesn't have enterprise logging, it doesn't have auditing, it only works for Gmail, it doesn't connect to your O365, it doesn't provide 17 of the features that you had asked us for, there's no enterprise support contract, and most critically, the same way they turned it on today, they can turn it off tomorrow and then you're fucked.
There's no reliability there, right?
You can't rely on anything that they push out that way. And it's the same thing with, like, even these early offerings that we're seeing with the frontier labs. Like, they jokingly, you can see these companies trying a bunch of new things, and that's what they're doing. They're trying. They throw something out, they see if it sticks, are people excited about it, then they shut it down tomorrow and they try something else. And that is not, again, that's not what enterprise sales are built on. So I think there's a couple of fundamental misunderstandings here. And one of them is, what does it mean to be successful as a tech startup? And in what market are you trying to succeed? Are you trying to succeed in the consumer market? Are you trying to succeed in the enterprise market? Like, where are you supposed to be getting your money from? If the question is, if the decision is that you're trying to make your money in the consumer space, yes, life is fucking hard and unpredictable. Because consumers are fickle, and you might release some garbage like OpenClaw, and oh my God, everybody fucking, and like, just like mania, and you make all this money. And you might release something genuinely genius tomorrow, and nobody consumes it, or they like it, and then a frontier lab comes out with a feature and you're fucked. But if you're trying to build a company and you're taking $60 million, $100 million in investment for a fucking Series A, presumably you're going after the enterprise market. Consumer is nice, but you're hoping to make real money with like predictable revenue and so on. So you're going after the enterprise market. Those factors, that sector is not as susceptible to this bullshit. And the only people that need to get really clear about that being the case are investors. Because it doesn't matter if people like judge that there's value to be gotten, there's still alpha to be gotten in making an email security company. What matters is, can I keep the lights on and get investment and bridge my way into having enough of a foothold in the enterprise market? And the true sickness that we're in, and it shows in the mania of the markets right now, is that all of this investment, disproportionate amounts of investment, are just being shoved into the same funds and firms and companies that own everything, which means there's a lot less liquidity in the market for people to try new things. And when you're fickle and the investors are fickle, and they go, well, why would I invest into your bullshit startup, which may do well or may not, when I can just put all my money into like BlackRock or whatever, and it's gonna, or just put it on Nvidia and it's gonna fucking 20x every 6 months. The problem isn't, do you have a viable business? It's just, you're competing with those level assured quote unquote returns. And most investors are just shoving all of their money into these like ridiculous, giant manic bets.
Yeah, but if you're a genuine startup founder and you're looking at building something that the frontier labs are already dabbling in, what is the advice to them? Because you want to have some nuance that, yes, they're never going to be as good as you are, and you're building for the enterprise and you have all this infrastructure in place, versus, hey, let's not underestimate the capabilities and the money and the resources that these big companies have to really go after my market and make me obsolete. What's the balance?
It's really simple. If you ask me, it's really simple. So I'm going to keep pointing the finger at the VCs for a good reason, right? I think the VC space has created a lot of really bad habits when it comes to starting a company. And they're mostly built around playing in the VC space and appealing to VCs, which is you get a bunch of money, and instead of doing the practical thing of determining what your go-to-market strategy is and your TAM and like how do I get my first customers, how do I get my first revenue as quickly as possible, instead you do this long game vision-y bullshit of like we're gonna build a brand and we're gonna blitz scale and hire all these people and like blah 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 blah, and like you're building a company that will have a promise of 4 years later on we'll situate ourselves. And that means that you are dependent on the VC hype to keep you going, because now you need a giant gas tank to get you from point A to point B. And once you're getting even close to point B, you're almost out of gas and you're begging people for more gas. Whereas like I think right now, what's most important is fail fast, win fast. This is a great time for like Y Combinator style thinking. Here's $500,000. You and your buddy sit your asses down here and you build this thing with the intent of making money as quickly as fucking possible with a fucking MVP. Like, build me a thing, show me that it has value, show me that people want it, show me what it's gonna do. Get first contact with customers as quickly as possible. And let's see. And in 3 months, we're going to know if you have something or if you don't. And if you don't, great. We didn't lose that much money. You built up some shit. Pivot. Go try something else. That's the true type of entrepreneurship that I think can be successful in this day and age. But like, I'm going to take 3 months to raise money to start a company, to then hire some people. And then 6 months later, maybe we'll have like a website with maybe a product category. And then 7 months after that,
pre-revenue, it's
yeah, like, and we're just going to keep this bullshit going. It means that you're playing in a game that never will be self-sustaining. It never ensures any kind of survival. It does improve viability, and it's entirely dependent on whether people believe your promises. And those people are drunk on easy profits and a lot of fear. So I wouldn't want to depend on them right now.
Hey, just yesterday or the day before, Jack Dorsey from Block announced he was going to lay off 40% of his staff because AI. I mean, the gist of his lowercase letter, which was posted on X, was, listen, AI is going to have me laying you guys off over multiple rounds moving forward. So it's not only the startup founders starting to feel the effects of it or starting to get spooked by the effects of it. I mean, he went on to explain that he overhired during COVID and split the company in two, which was a mistake that he's trying to correct now. But that was a spooky letter to read. It's a scary letter to read for a lot of folks in struggling with this "am I going to be replaced" thing. And we keep saying, no, you're not going to be replaced. You're going to be made more powerful. But at the same time, big company like Block cuts 50% of their staff. How do you guys think about like the effects of that as part of this conversation? Costin, you got a take?
I mean, this is something we discussed last year, remember? And when I was talking about the fact that we don't want necessarily to increase efficiency or like fire people, we want to increase the production. We want like more volume. We want more IOCs, if like better than, I don't know, the same level of IOCs, but with less people. And this is coming pretty much for everyone. I think some sectors for sure will be hit first, and at some point even people working in the AI sphere will be hit as well, as the cannibalism and the kind of lifetime of new AI startups will decrease and decrease. Like someone will come up with some ideas and start some new project, AI project, and then, like you say, Anthropic will come the next month and just kill it. And if this is happening at the moment, perhaps, going after certain types of companies, the types of companies that will be affected will increase, and pretty much everything will be affected. And I was actually wondering while listening to Jack's talk, I was wondering if could it be that this feud between the government and Anthropic is related also to Anthropic coming up with all these new features and crashing the market, and then you see like the stocks of all these different companies go down, and all those people calling Trump upset, like, what the fuck is Dario doing? Like, he's crashing our stocks, he's crashing our investment. Do something about it. And there you go. Like, perhaps you can release all these features in a better way. I don't know. Like, don't make them that good. Make them less good, or at least make them available to the military
What the fuck are you
first.
talking about?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Juanito, is the Jack letter a precursor of what's coming down the pike, or is it an outlier?
I think it's not an outlier. I'm surprised it's taken this long. I want to choose my words kind of carefully, because I think this is one of those situations where, like, I'll say something that to me just makes sense, and that other people are gonna get fucking pissed about. But
nobody listens to us, and for the few folks listen to us, we don't fact check. So
that's fair. Okay. Look, this makes a lot of sense. It's almost an inevitability. And if it wasn't before, now that you see that he did that and was rewarded by the market with a big stock bump, then if it wasn't an inevitability before, it is now. Let's talk about it dispassionately for a second. We can go back to having the real, humanity of it all in there. But let's talk about it dispassionately for 1 second. We have a company. The company is supposed to build the product or multiple products, and those products have a market. They have a TAM and a total addressable market, and there's a certain amount of money you could make. And a part of how much money you're making is how much can you saturate that market, that revenue for yourself, and how low can you get your costs while addressing that market. Someone comes out with revolutionary technology that now 10x's the capabilities of everybody that works in that company. The market doesn't necessarily get any bigger. It doesn't necessarily have that much buying power. It doesn't necessarily get any simpler. It's just that every person in your company can do 10 times more. If I had 1,000 employees, and that's what I needed to maintain and innovate and build and supply these 6 products, and my TAM is the same, I now have the equivalent of 10,000 employees, theoretically, round numbers, super simplistic. I now have 10,000 employees to address the same, the equivalent output of 10,000 employees to address the same total addressable market. So unless we're saying that this company is now going to create 10 other products that have other total addressable markets that now mean we can make ridiculous orders of magnitude more money, why would I have that many employees to supply the same thing? It's just a simple business metric. And look, so my problem with this is not necessarily Dorsey's decision. I think he's just the first to do it. And I think that in some ways, there are some things that I look forward to or that I'm curious about as to how these things get a little more ruthless, which is, the bullshit jobs class, the managerial class, the administrative class has grown exponentially and out of control, right? So is this, how does this shit handle the explosion and ridiculous HR processes and finance processes and like internal bureaucracies and sales, whatever. Cool. That'll be interesting. The reality of it is that these companies are going to cut folks. What I would love to see, especially from someone like Dorsey, who has created multiple companies and done so in parallel, would have been, hey, Block doesn't need these people. They're great, but we overhired, and with all the AI, we are oversupplied in capacity, so we don't need them. They're still great people. Block doesn't need them. So we're going to fire 40%, but I'm starting this other company, I don't know, Cylinder, that's going to take on this whole nother market with a totally different thing. And, I am leaving 80% of the openings for 40% of the people we fired as like an opt-in. If you want to, you have a job at this other company tomorrow, right? Like, because if you're telling me that you hired well and you just have too much capacity, then the entrepreneur in me goes, okay, what other market can I apply those people to now? Maybe Block doesn't need it. It's too much weight on Block. Cool. But we thought about like there's this whole like medical supply, blah, blah area that we never really thought to take on because it was just like a little too different. And why don't I just start a company with these same 40% of staff that I've already trained and I already trust and like blah, blah. Right? Like that's what right now we're talking about it being like a resource misallocation problem. And the result is to just cut the excess resource. Whereas like, if you're telling me I just have too much resource for the task at hand, well, do I have other tasks that I would like to take on?
I don't know. When everybody gets laid off, who's going to like find money to spend on all these things that they wish to sell? Like that's the long chess question I have is like when AI replaces all of these things and we get to a point now where there are no humans left to pay for it. Like how does society adjust to all of this?
Well, that's where you get into these like Andrew Yang discussions and the real look, the ultimate problem of this entire thing, and it's the ultimate problem of our entire society, period, is simply that we have continued to create ways for capital to engender more capital, irrespective of humans. And we have made it okay to not redistribute that capacity and that wealth to mechanisms that make life more affordable, manageable, and simpler for other people. So, which just means maybe fucking corporations paid their fucking taxes and the ultra wealthy paid their fucking taxes, maybe the country wouldn't be broke and we wouldn't be in a position where people don't know where they're going to have their next meal or where they're going to get their next house. And then we could have a different conversation about entrepreneurship, right? Like if you were comfortably living in the home you already paid off and you get laid off, but shit, the technology's new and my 401k is fine and like I know where I'm getting my medications. Okay, I wanted to be a woodworker, I'm going to try that. Or actually me and my buddy are going to go start a new company, and it doesn't mean that we're laying our entire lives and progeny on the line. The problems you have here are like massive economic problems, and they're not about the tech itself. It's the fact that like we've let any and all safety nets fall apart. We have massive amounts of debt that we don't know how to handle. The housing is like impossible to manage. Medication's impossible to manage. And everyone's been living off of this altruistic company shit, which still bothers me to this day. Because how can you look at companies like Nvidia and Amazon and Google and Apple that are like multi-trillion-dollar companies, but the people who work there aren't billionaires, right? Like it's not like there's an equal distribution of the increase or anything like that, right? Like you still probably making, even if you're like a hella exec at Apple, you're probably still making what, like 500,000 in base and bonus, and then you've got like RSUs and PSUs. in the order of like 10 million a year or something, 20 million a year, fuck it, 30 million a year. It's still not anywhere near, right, the alpha that the company generates. So like there's just no redistribution of this shit. You don't pay the taxes, you don't pay the employees. It just all bubbles up in this like theoretical land, and then everybody else is fucking starving.
We're an hour and a half in, and this is just like the 2 of 10 AI stories I have on the list. So we'll leave a bunch of them for next week because I want to get to a couple other small things I want to get to before we close the show. And one is this week we got news that Peter Williams, the Trenchant executive, was sentenced to 7 years in prison in the US, and immediately after that he'll be deported back to his native Australia. The government had asked for 9 years. He got sentenced to 7 years. And in tandem with that, the Department of Justice announced sanctions against this Operation Zero exploit purchasing service that we had discussed on previous episodes here. Costin, you got a chance to go through the releases there. Anything surprise you at all around the sanctions bit?
Well, the sanctions bit is very interesting. The sentencing was not very interesting to me. I mean, it was pretty much to be expected. Like, he did some bad stuff. What is interesting from the sentencing is the fact they say that he sold 8 0 days. So I think this is some new information, and this is interesting because you can also match it kind of against the money that he received, which was $1.3 million in crypto. So I take it that those were not like the iOS zero-click
so just from your calculations, they're not the $100,000 ones or the $500,000 ones.
It looks more to me they were like perhaps some kind of browser exploits and some kind of EOP exploits, so maybe not the high-end iPhone exploits. So that was an interesting point in the sentencing. Of course, the sanctioning of the Operation Zero, this was kind of crazy because it wasn't entirely sure to whom he was selling the 0 days. So there were like some speculation as to who might be the buyer, but now knowing that it was Operation Zero, and remember we discussed Operation Zero before in the context of them sponsoring, I think, the PH Days conference in Moscow some years ago. So they do appear. And also, like all the context around Operation Zero that they are talking about in regards to the sanction is interesting. For instance, the fact that they established a UAE-based company called, Special Technology Services, anticipating that they will be reselling these 0 days somewhere in the region, perhaps in the Middle East or Asia. And also, I think there was also an information that these exploits eventually made their way to South Korea, if I'm not mistaken here. So please fact check me if I'm mistaken. But the fact that these 0 days ended up somewhere in South Korea is also interesting. Is it like one of the kind of the supply chain for what is Dark Hotel and the likes, and all the 0 days that Clement Le Sing has been finding for years from the South Korean side. Did they come this way? At least some of them. I think this is also an interesting observation here. It was also kind of crazy for me that they sanctioned a bunch of other guys, such as Oleg Vyacheslavovic Kucherov, who was a suspected member of the Trickbot gang. And the fact that they were working with Operation Zero, like, it's kind of mind-blowing to me, because it would suggest that these cyber criminal groups had some kind of connection or maybe even access to 0 days procured by Operation Zero, and then leveraging those kind of 0 days against their targets, which, ransomware related targets like hospital in the United States, which is what is the language being used in the
that was part
Treasury,
of the announcement.
PR,
Part of the announcement is that these Trickbot people conducted a variety of malicious cyber activities, including ransomware attacks against the U.S. government, as well as hospitals and healthcare centers across the United States. So it's fair to say that Peter Williams sold exploits to people linked to ransomware attacks against hospitals in the United States. I mean,
one of his defenses were that he didn't know they were Russian, which is how can you not know when you're selling to Op0? And even we kind of knew that Op0 was a Russian entity, like Russian related. So yeah, that's a bit crazy. The only thing which bothers me, like there's something which bothers me with this story, and like we're freaking out. We are. Other people, everyone is freaking out about 80 days that Trenchant. At least it means the fact he sold 80 days, it means they have 80. Okay? That's what it means in practice. That they have
$35
about
million
80.
worth of losses, according to this court case. It cost Trenchant $35 million in
$1 million?
business. This.
Oh, okay. Those are typically inflated numbers, so I don't know what to make of it. But what bothers me in this story is that everyone's freaking out about these exploits and the potential of them being used by TrickBot against hospital in the US, and there's zero IOCs. Like, where are like all the IOCs for these 0 days? How to spot them? How to detect? Maybe they've been patched already. Have they been patched by Microsoft or Chrome or whoever? This is like the key element, the key information that we need out of this story is: are these still 0 days? Have they been patched? If they have been patched, which one are they? Are they all patched?
You're asking for this from Trenchant. You're putting the responsibility on Trenchant to tell us this?
I am. You know, like who needs to make this decision is the U.S. government, in my opinion. Because if you let it to Trenchant, their lawyers will never allow them to do anything. And we know, like,
would they even be able to? Like, if I sold
the lawyers.
No, I'm saying Trenchant,
No,
right? Like, if I sell the exploits under terms that require non-disclosure, is Trenchant even in a position to do so, as opposed to the governments that they've sold that stuff to?
This is a moment for CISA to prove their worth and step up and publish the advisory with the Yara rules, like the good ones, not the bad ones from before, but the good ones, like which, by the way, they look like they're coming from Google. So, I don't know.
And Google is passing Yara rules to CISA to distribute.
Remember, I said, like, wow,
yes, you can tell.
Their leadership is not approved by the Congress, but their Yara rules are better than ever. It looks like some of the most recent Google Yara rules, they look like the CISA Yara rules. So that makes me think, maybe their CISA Yara rules were coming from Google. So this is a moment for CISA, in my opinion, step up, prove their worth, publish the advisory where they say, like, these CVEs were those 8. Like, this is the CVEs, these are the patches, everything's good, these are the Yara rules, these are the IOCs. When the TrickBot or whoever is using them, like, or Dark Hotel or whoever is using them, this is how you spot the activity. And I mean, everyone can feel safer. Everything can be better. And like, this is why, in my opinion, CISA was created in the first place, like, to address issues like this that Trenchant would never address themselves because their lawyers wouldn't allow it to happen.
I don't want to sidetrack the conversation, the point you're making, but CISA is not the place to turn to now. Just last night, we got reporting out of Politico that the deputy director, acting deputy director, this, I don't know how to pronounce his name, the same guy who supposedly failed the polygraph test and has been removed from his post and reassigned somewhere else. So CISA is now without a director because he's not getting Senate confirmation, and the deputy director, and the reporting is like just complete chaos in there. I don't know how to read any of that. So to look to CISA for it at this point,
that the NSA director was also not confirmed or something like this.
Well, I think there's news that one senator plans not to confirm him. Or you'll fact check me on that if I say anything. So I'm not going to say anything. But I want to go back to the crux of the issue, Juanito, is it reasonable? Is it reasonable to ask for IOCs and Yara rules, especially when the government has said that it's been used in ransomware attacks against U.S. hospitals? Whether they can do it or not is whether it's another discussion. But isn't it reasonable to say we're the freaking IOCs?
I think it is contingent on the assessment of what that means. Like, that's, that statement about, like, it's been used. Well, when and in what way and what capacity did it play? Is it done? Are we already past it? Right? You know what I mean? Like, this is very much like an assessment of particulars.
Do you think all do you think all 80 days have been reported and patched? And shouldn't that be a reasonable request or some?
I think it would be a reasonable request if this is like an active and, an active issue that people have to deal with. Absolutely, you should release, IOCs and whatnot. At the same time, like, there are also ways to do it that don't necessarily entail the entire like hullabaloo of adding this to a case, right? Because part of the conflicting priorities that you have here is, I'm sure that the DOJ's main concern in this period has been prosecuting this guy, getting the sanctions through, and like that often conflicts with the public interests of like, let's just release information, right? Like, there's also a certain amount of remember what Trenchant is selling, what L3 Harris is selling, and to whom, right? Like, and just how spooked and how meticulous and methodical Five Eyes is about their ops, right? So yeah, sure, we would love to expose, the IOCs for these O-days that might put people at risk. But what did we use these for already? And is this going to lead
That's the risk of, right,
to people basically
being
like, oh,
Kostin
look,
going and finding some Five Eyes thing somewhere in Lebanon.
People like Kostin who just don't have any regard for, for these poor operators who need to hide their new equation group. Yeah, yes. These new equation group toolkits or what. Like, so that's the reality of it, right? Like, if they don't even want to put like the assessment of damage in public, right? And that's what the defense attorney was like complaining about. So presumably these things have been used, and part of the problem here is, okay, what's the, how much of it is hyperbole just because you want to throw the book at this guy because he was, piece of shit? And how much of it is like, actually, yeah, we already use this as part of this toolkit to spy on whatever. And
at the same time, it's in Russian hands. And we should have it patched because now it's in Russian hands.
Is it patched? That's a question.
That's a question.
Well,
like something as simple as
all those questions matter, but also all those questions go into the assessment, right? Like, there's not a blanket answer here. If the response is, yeah, the Russians got this and it went on the Kev, totally unrelated to this, like 6 months ago, and this has already been patched, then the answer is like, well, how much are we going to change by doing any of this? And the answer may very well be nothing. Is that necessarily what's happening here? Not necessarily. But like, this is one of those areas where I go, is IOCs absolutely... I mean, of course I fucking love to see them, but also I would love to see them because I'd be doing the same shit that they're worried about, which is like, where else did any of this shit show up? What was this O-Day used for? What kind of harnesses is this being used in? Oh my God, look, equation group 2, vroom, right? Like, there's a whole aspect of this that like we would be having a fucking field day with, but I don't necessarily blame them for not wanting to increase the surface area of the quote unquote damage and exposure that this has presented them with.
And if some hospitals fall victim to these 0 days, I mean, whatever.
No respect for blinking lights in hospitals.
Those poor
babies.
The babies. On Windows XP breathing devices.
Keep in mind that it would still be possible to release the IOCs for whatever the Russians and others were doing with these exploits. Like, you can still say these are the IOCs for the operations from their side which leveraged these CVs. And you can still say these CVs, it's been patched, like, you guys shouldn't worry about.
Well, I'm curious what we're trying to devastate here, right? Because like, I would find it much more interesting to get an understanding of the exploit, the slightly less, the illegitimate exploit ecosystem. And like, okay, he sold these things and they went to where? And those things got sold to whom? And those things that got sold to whom got used for what? And how many ways was that like a duplicate or triplicate sale, right? Like, how does the South Korean broker... That's why this is a
shit business, right? Like, that's why like it's such a greasy shit business.
Any business that derives its value from near total information asymmetry is this kind of opportunist business where the whole point of it is it's an inefficient market. By definition, it's an inefficient market because there is no clear competition. There is no clear valuation. There's no clear ownership. There's no clear sense of the whole of the market because it's about information asymmetry. It's like nobody should know. The value of this thing comes from nobody knowing the product, the scarcity, the availability, the value of use, the ROI, the customers, right? So like it's an inefficient market any way you look at it.
Kostin, close the show with some shout outs.
Phew, you caught me unprepared. I was still like hoping for IOX, CVEs, CISA.
If we had a functioning CISA, I would say, well, make your plea.
Do you really think that's a problem?
Did we ever have a functioning CISA?
Shields up, my friend. Shields up.
By the way, there was. Should we go there? Should we not? I don't know. Like it feels too good to miss, right?
You're the one with the time limit, bro. I don't know what you're.
The one with the timer. We we got like very interesting information this week from our listener George Makrakis about Fortinet achieving IEC 62443, which sounds like an SSL port thingy, but it's not.
What the
right
fuck is
certification
that?
For secure product development, which reminds us of the pledge, right?
Wow.
Correct. It's like one of those like government certifications that you have to be in some segment of some certain business. The same thing. Apple also announced that the iPhone and the iPad have been approved to handle classified NATO information. Right, it's kind of like along those lines.
Those two things are not. Those two things are not congruous.
They're not.
They're not at all equivalent, right? Like, congratulations to Apple. Fun conversation to be had there.
The others, good luck with your Fortinet.
Well, honestly, I appreciate that this is being pointed out. I didn't catch the exact certification name. Who provides this certification? Because this is a wonderful moment for us to stop and be like, excuse me, how the fuck could you rubber stamp this company in the middle of all of this, right? I am more than happy to like find somebody right now to whip and for explanations. Like, tell me what it is you do here and what it is you provide and how the fuck this company meets it. And it like either explain to me how your standards have any merit or how your evaluation was clearly skewed. Because like something's wrong here.
Let me read a couple of lines very quickly from the announcement. Fortinet has achieved this certification at maturity level 2 for our secure product development lifecycle. This is a globally recognized benchmark for secure engineering practices in the development of ICS products. There's a line there that stood out to me that this ICS, the IEC 62443, Juanito, this is the answer to your question, is the premier international standard for cybersecurity focused on IACS and OT domains. These standards defines requirement and processes, and it shows that Fortinet took security seriously in all their engineering, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I mean, this is that kind of, I mean, it makes us shake our heads, but those guys get to go and sell to bigger people.
Why are we shaking our heads? Can I say why I'm shaking my head?
Tell me.
No.
So, like, what does it say here? Certification, the secure development process are formalized, document, repeatable, consistently practiced, aligning with rigorous requirement for engineering discipline, risk management, product integrity. Meanwhile, Fortinet appliances still hash, well, they don't hash actually, they obfuscate users' passwords using the string Mary had a little lamb truncated to 16 characters.
Mary had a little.
And
Still
even the latest version of their operating systems, like the latest of the greatest, still does that unless you change it. And when you change it, what do? They use like some other random string, which is stored inside the operating system.
That exposes
which
the
an
passwords.
attacker theoretically can still extract, unless of course it's in a TPM that not all appliances have. when you could actually use something like a hash that the rest of the industry has been using since 1971, like I don't know, the MD5 crypt hash would be a better choice than this thing.
We need to put Costin in charge of this certification. Go ahead.
Yes, me at the no certification, me at the secure development processes, yeah, and Jack's counseling Dario Amodei on how to answer the phone when Pete Hegseth is calling you to discuss, safety guards.
The thing about the Fortinet thing is that it was fixed, but not turned on
by default.
By default.
What does it mean it was fixed? Can I ask you, what does it, like when you still encrypt?
Like there's a CVE and there's a patch for it.
Yeah, but what does the patch do? You didn't, like, it's like saying, look, your car's lock is bad, and say like, cool, I patched it. Now you need a bigger key. Like, but still, it's not patch. It's still encrypting, obfuscating the user passwords instead of hashing them, which is just wrong in my humble opinion. But anyways, shout outs to George who shared this story with us. And obviously we don't want like to criticize all these vendors. Like we have no beef with them, correct? We have no beef with
We're not picking on Fortinet,
We're
but
not
Cisco
picking on anyone.
Cisco announced this week that a new CVE in
How the fuck are we not talking about this
SD-WAN
Cisco thing? Are we really gonna leave this? I'm sorry, I just had a moment. I'm like, it's Saturday,
thing?
It's almost over. How the fuck are we not talking about this? Are you kidding me?
Tell us.
People will kill me if I don't fucking.
What is a Cisco thing?
I've tried to get everything in, but we're running out of time. Cisco Talos announced that CVE 2026-20127, a vulnerability in their SD-WAN controller, formerly called vSmart, allows an authenticated remote attacker to bypass authentication and obtain admin privileges on the affected system by sending a specially crafted request to the affected system. They also, in tandem, released a PDF from some intelligence partner identifying that the actor escalated root via software version downgrade. So they got in, did a software version downgrade, and then did their exploitation. Pretty interesting report. Why are you screaming about this report, Juanito?
I'm not sure. And I'll say that because I've been hearing that this was coming down the pipe from multiple gov partners. And they shared no real details other than to say, holy shit, this is really, really bad. The fucking victimology is fucking really, really, really bad. And the response from Cisco is really, really bad. And that's all I heard. And then this thing dropped. And now what it looks like to me is like we're right back in the like JJ Cummings mishandling of this type of bullshit where you go, okay, we have fucked the government. We have probably fucked all of the Five Eyes governments. And we are probably in an indefensible position when it comes to the security of these products. So let's just not answer any of their questions or really tell them any of what's going on and be as unhelpful as possible, such as to manage information disclosure in a way that we think is somehow wise. And hopefully if we stonewall these governments, they will just let this one sail by and pretend that nothing happened. But my understanding of this SD-WAN thing is like there are way more vulns that are actually being reported or discussed. And the exposure that this produces is insane. Like you're basically saying that like for the past 3 years, someone
dating back to 2023, how do you not know that from 2023 to now they found evidence of malicious activity dating back to 2023 after the discovery of this active exploitation of the
we
OD?
don't know the actor. We're not being told who it is. We're not being given any IOCs. And we have this like mangled language in the disclosure about how like, well, they never jumped off the network. And you're like, I'm sorry. I'm pretty certain what this thing is the ability to reconfigure this virtual network to include whole nother components that were not supposed to be a part of the network. So yeah, maybe they never jumped off the network because they could redefine the whole fucking network. Like the level of compromise this is. And the worst part is like we have no words from anybody as to where these fucking devices were and what they're being used for. But the fact that these multiple governments are just like, their eyes are yay fucking big about this happening lets us know that these things were probably being used in some pretty critical places. And I don't know who the fuck this is. Let's assume it's the Chinese, but I don't know who the fuck it is. Whoever the fuck this was what? Mirroring traffic out of these sensitive places, keeping their, creating entire like whole other segments of these networks that were doing what?
This is a much bigger story than
this is massive.
10-paragraph press release.
This is fucking massive. And this is one of those moments when like I look at Cisco and I just, guys,
we've applauded the Talos folks for competent reports with IOX and Yara rules and all of that stuff. So how does something like this happen?
Because this is one of those moments when I look at Cisco and I squint my eyes and I go,
who are you?
Like you're abusing the Talos brand because this is not a Talos product. B, you have better relationships in the IC than are being utilized right now. And that's why I look at like their rep to the IC and go, I think this job is a little too big for you. And you're clearly not handling this shit well. Because I don't care what the fuck you're telling the people who employ you. The people you are interfacing with are extremely unhappy. And if they could melt you in a vat of acid, they would. But this isn't a problem of like, well, there's some vulns. This is a problem of when shit goes down, your vendor is not your partner in handling the situation. They're doing damage control against you. And that, like, I know if USG and some of these other governments had more options in their hands right now, they would fucking crush Cisco out of the way and just go with something else.
Costin, we got a report from the Australian government alongside this, a Cisco SD-WAN hunt guide. Was that any more useful to you or to hunters?
It was just as useful. Like, to be honest, like there's like some very generic language in this report from Australia saying, like, for instance, signs of the attack is like clearing /var log, which succeeds if the attacker was root. Like, really, like this is in pretty much every kind of Unix manual. It's like not necessarily an indicator of this activity or any activity in general, but the recommendations are pretty much along these lines. There are like some kind of Cisco specific messages that you can look for, but again, it's not very clear to me if these messages are exclusive to this attack or actually they can be an indication of anything. For instance, there's like I don't even know what to know. It's like, for instance, status test. What does it mean, a status test? Description: hunt for increased or low frequency SSL shutdown. But status test, is it like a test or is it like a real attack?
Is that related to the software version downgrade that requires a reboot? And shouldn't that be a detection mechanism on reboot? Should flag something in your SOC? I mean, I don't know.
It's tricky. I hope more is coming. And as you are saying, there's a lot of questions here, like who is this UAT 8616 that Cisco writes about? Their advisory also does not include any kind of IOX, only like generic things like evidence of log and history clearing. I mean, everyone is doing that nowadays. Logs residing in var log, everyone's clearing var log. Presence of a CLI history file for a user without the bash history. Like, this is unusual, perhaps, if you ask me. Yeah, it means like the bash history has been cleaned. But yeah, I think you guys are onto something when saying that there's more to this story than it means.
3 years, bro.
3 years.
Does Cisco have this certification? That's my question.
Dude, I'm not over that. Like, I'm sorry. We left that Fortinet thing too soon. I want to find these people that just gave Fortinet this certification, and I want them, like, I want to put them front and center.
Put
and
them
be
in
like,
the same
what?
room with the guy with your AirPods. The Apple, the
Yeah,
guy
we're
at
like,
Apple.
bro, what the fuck are you people doing?
It sounds like you're starting a book with people who are not okay in your book.
Not okay in your book.
It sounds
I
like
would need a fucking tome. My book is, just runneth over.
Costin, close the show with some shout outs. We gotta go.
what
You were at
there was
Caro
like a-
Workshop. How was that?
Caro Workshop. But first of all, the Caro Workshop is a very interesting event because it's one of these old school industry events. For people who don't know, Caro means the
Real old
computer,
school.
computer
Like the 1990s
antivirus
guys, yeah.
researchers organization was founded in 1991, if I remember
you go.
correctly. So it's been around for a long while and it still has antivirus. How many people are still talking about antivirus nowadays? Like all EDR and AI, LLMs.
Anti-malware.
And
Even malware has replaced the word virus. Yeah.
but antivirus, right? But on the other hand, this event is so good in my opinion because it touches like very deeply technical topics like threat actors trying to bypass security products in a very specific way. What is the latest? How they're trying to go around things such as enhanced business intelligence and all these buzzwords that we use nowadays to.
Is it an off-the-record conference?
It is typically TLP red to TLP black, like between red and black level. We also did a talk there about our LLM honeypots and trying to catch different types of actors, like for instance Chinese trying to work out how to bypass restrictions on different models. The Russians trying to use openly available models on the internet to do code development. So we're gonna probably write a blog about this soon and push it on tlpblack.net. But overall, I think it's a very interesting event because it has this touch to the old world, to the old school world, and for people who are deep into malware analysis, reverse engineering, this is a very, very cool conference. And the location was also amazing. It was the first time for me in Innsbruck, which is quite beautiful around this time of the year. It was sunny for 2 days, snow in the mountains.
Nice.
We were like in this beautiful place, a university, clean air, very cool presentations, and like the perfect amount of audience is there, like around perhaps less than 100 people, maybe less than 100 people, with a lot of off-the-record talks and very good quality information. So for me, it was very interesting.
Did you do some podcast promotion there among that audience? We need the old school listeners as well.
They're not into it.
It was
They're
very
not.
cool to see that people knew the podcast and people were actually asking, like, today is Friday, when are you recording? And I was like,
There you go.
today I'm taking the
Those are
bus
our people.
back to Munich. Like, this is another funny story, which is I bought a ticket from Lufthansa to go to Innsbruck, and they sold me like 2 flight tickets, one to Munich and one from Bucharest, Munich, Innsbruck. I didn't check, but somehow I thought it was weird that it took 2 hours from Bucharest to Munich, and then it took almost 3 hours from Munich to Innsbruck. And this is like 100 kilometers. How can a flight
on the ticket.
Yeah. The flight.
It was a bus ride?
It was a bus ride.
This motherfucker bought a bus ride and thought it was a plane ticket.
Yes, and not only that, but on your phone you would get notifications from Lufthansa saying your flight is boarding. It's not the flight, the bus is boarding, but it said like your flight is boarding. I have
never heard of that
now.
in my life.
Your flight LH, and it had like a flight number LH 3834 and 3835 on the way
Did you book
back.
this in OpenClaw?
I booked that with Claude, yes.
Idiots.
So that was the first time for me to fly the Lufthansa bus, which was
You actually took the
unforgettable.
bus.
I took
Bought a bus
and
ticket
I
and thought it was a
Wow.
flight.
I asked Lufthansa support, like, hey, can I go with the car? Like my buddy is gonna drive from Munich to Innsbruck. Can I fly to? And then instead of taking the bus flight from Munich to Innsbruck, and they say, well, if you don't complete all the segments of the flight, we're gonna cancel your return ticket. So you cannot go with your buddy in his car from Munich to Innsbruck.
What
Oh,
an
well,
adventure.
anyways.
You're back at home. Welcome back.
Thanks
Thanks for showing up on the show, and thanks for giving us a couple of extra minutes. Juanito, to close the show, give us some shout outs quickly.
I mean, there's so much
CJ
news and so
Moses.
many.
CJ
CJ Moses is back. We didn't fucking talk about it. Like, our boy CJ's back. No, man, there's so
a lot
much
of stuff we
happening.
missed.
And
There's a lot of stuff we missed.
There was
We need
this
to record a
story which
second
to me
episode on Monday.
it was like such a cool story with our favorite Anthropic complaining that the Chinese are harvesting
Stealing.
their
Yeah, they're
models,
distilling.
stealing their models and stealing the books they stole. Like, no, whatever.
Google also shipped a distilling report, and I'm curious if you guys think that's related to what's coming from DeepSeek, because there's a DeepSeek renewal rumored for a while. It's coming any week, and then suddenly you're getting this anti-DeepSeek noise out of the US
Google
companies.
one because what I saw was actually a YouTube video of Jeff Dean talking about distillation as like a positive thing, right? Because like the distilling they do is to, like, when you get like a flash model or a haiku model, right? Like, you're just distilling into like a smaller, faster, less accurate form factor that can run quickly. So distillation is like a thing they do. So I'd be really curious to see how they're characterizing it. But like, okay, so we're recording another episode, what, on Monday, I guess? Or
Right,
like, how
enough
are
of
we?
this.
We should.
Enough of this. Reverse conference. Jordan's reverse conference is coming up, I believe, next week. Are you going to be there,
I will
Juanito?
be there. I will be at Reverse. I'm very excited for some proper RE time. I really want to see essentially how all this technology advancement has changed. Has it shifted things? Because like that's where you get like the real, depth of folks actually marbling this technology. So I'm very excited for that and looking forward to seeing some good friends over there. And then the week after, Nebula Fog, which we're actually SentinelOne is sponsoring, and we're pretty interested.
You and I are both going to be out there.
We will be there. Gabe will be there. Gregor will be there. And frankly, like, to be totally cards on the table, like, we talk so much about the viability of value in business with AI and like how important it is to security and everything. I am really interested in seeing how things have evolved from the last Nebula Fog to this, like to see what people can do, what they want to do, to participate myself. Like, I want to kind of go and try out my harness and stuff. So I'm pretty excited for Nebula Fog. I'm really looking forward to it, mostly for the results. And while we're on shout outs, which I forget, I need to write this shit down throughout the week, but like, shout out to friends at Sandia, friends at Stripe, friends at other places that have all been using the Claude control harness. I archived it this week being like, all right, I'm going to go try to build something new. I'm going to refactor it. And people like jumped up to be like, what happened? Are you not using this anymore? Like, are we not maintaining it? I'm just like, okay, fine. So I'm still at it for the time being, but there's a lot of interesting shit to move to. So interesting times, guys. Just ignore the war, ignore the economy, ignore everything that's literally falling apart around us. Just burn tokens, bro. Just burn those tokens.
Great way to end the show. Catch you guys next week.
Bye-bye.
Burn those tokens.
Arrivederci.
This episode of The Three Body Problem is presented by Thinkst Canary. Most companies find out they've been breached way too late, usually after the damage is already done. Thinkst Canary flips that model. You deploy canaries or canary tokens in minutes, drop them into your environment, and then forget about them. When an attacker touches one, they tip their hand and you get a single high-confidence alert exactly when it matters. There's virtually no admin overhead, almost no false positives, and that's why canaries are used by some of the best security teams in the world, on all 7 continents. If you want early warning that actually works, check them out at canary.tools or see what real users are saying at canary.love.